The phone call came through at 3:22 in the morning Dallas time while I was knee-deep in server racks, attempting to isolate an aggressive ransomware attack that had completely locked down Crestview Federal Bank of Texas. My phone buzzed persistently against my hip. I tried to ignore it at first, keeping my attention locked on the diagnostic monitors. But when it buzzed for the fourth consecutive time, I pulled off my work gloves and checked the caller identification. It was Lyle Higgins, my direct supervisor at Apex Cyber Solutions, calling from corporate headquarters during what would normally be quiet off hours. I hesitated before answering. When you are actively managing a critical cybersecurity breach that is hemorrhaging $220,000 per hour in halted banking operations, phone calls from corporate middle management feel considerably less urgent than the glowing crimson alert screens illuminating the data center floor. I tapped the screen and answered because 19 years of being the primary crisis responder conditions you to respond automatically. Old habits from my 8 years in the Air Force working on tactical communication security do not disappear easily. Vance speaking, I said, keeping my tone crisp. Nathaniel, it is Lyle, he replied, his voice flat and devoid of any greeting. I am calling to inform you of an executive staffing decision. Effective immediately, Apex Cyber Solutions no longer requires your services as senior cybersecurity architect. Your employment is terminated as of right now. I stood completely still, staring at the central monitoring console in front of me. Ransomware signature 0x73A was actively propagating through the primary domain controllers. Database encryption was already 73% complete across the core clusters. 58 bank branch locations were entirely dark, with automated teller machine networks and online portals completely locked down under emergency containment protocols. Standing 10 feet away was Diana Prescott, Crestview Federal Bank Director, watching me with absolute desperation in her eyes, because I was literally the only engineer in the building who understood their customized security framework well enough to stop the payload. I understand, I replied, keeping my voice entirely steady. I will inform the bank director that you will personally be managing the recovery procedures for the ongoing breach. There was a pause on the line long enough that I thought the connection had dropped. What breach? Lyle asked, sounding genuinely confused. The zero-day ransomware attack that brought me to Dallas yesterday afternoon, I explained. The entire regional banking network is encrypted. The outage is costing Crestview approximately $220,000 per hour in lost transaction processing and operational penalties. I am currently midway through reverse engineering the key derivation function. I assume you will want to dispatch another senior architect immediately, since I am no longer an employee of Apex Cyber Solutions. Another heavy silence stretched over the phone line. I could hear him breathing heavily into his receiver. Nathaniel, let us hold off on discussing the paperwork until after you have cleared up the Crestview problem, Lyle said, his arrogant posture suddenly wavering. I do not believe that would be appropriate, I answered firmly. You have explicitly terminated my employment effective immediately. Performing technical work on Apex client systems as a non-employee creates significant legal liability and violates basic corporate compliance rules. I will brief Diana Prescott on my preliminary diagnostic findings and then catch the first flight back to Michigan. I have a family and my own retirement planning to focus on now. Wait, Nathaniel, do not touch anything yet, Lyle stammered. Let me call you right back. He cut the connection before I could respond. My name is Nathaniel Vance. I am 54 years old, and I was just terminated in the middle of a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity crisis that nobody else at my company possessed the specialized knowledge to resolve. Before I explain what transpired over the subsequent 72 hours, let me establish the background of who I am and why that brief telephone call was the most ruinously expensive administrative blunder Lyle Higgins ever committed. I joined Apex Cyber Solutions 19 years ago as a senior systems defense engineer specializing in regional financial institution networks. Prior to that civilian transition, I served 8 years in the United States Air Force, managing secure communications arrays and cryptographic security systems at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. The military instilled in me an unyielding discipline, meticulous attention to detail, and the ability to maintain composure under extreme operational pressure when critical missions depended on flawless execution. Those core traits translated seamlessly into civilian cybersecurity, where bank network failures could devastate local businesses and freeze family life savings. Apex Cyber Solutions designed, deployed, and maintained custom security infrastructure for regional banks, credit unions, and wealth management firms where data breaches meant catastrophic losses. My specific role was emergency incident response. Whenever a client suffered an advanced persistent threat or sophisticated malware infection that their internal IT departments could not contain, corporate dispatched me. Over 19 years, I had responded to 324 emergency security incidents across 12 states. I had reverse-engineered custom encryption algorithms, traced nation-state malware vectors, recovered corrupted SQL databases, and closed structural vulnerabilities that threaten multi-billion-dollar institutions. Most importantly, I had accumulated 19 years of irreplaceable institutional knowledge regarding the specific architectural frameworks APEX had engineered for its key clients. Every financial institution possessed unique legacy modifications, custom application programming interfaces, and specific security handshakes that existed nowhere else. Much of that critical context existed only in my mind and in my detailed operational journals. My wife Clara used to joke that I collected broken corporate networks the way other men collected vintage muscle cars. After 32 years of marriage, she understood my dedication completely. Our two grown children, both successful adults with families of their own, often laughed that their father could decrypt complex military-grade ciphers but struggled with the television streaming app. They were not wrong, but they respected that my work kept vital economic networks alive. That specialized expertise made me incredibly valuable to Apex Cyber Solutions. That exact expertise was also what Lyle Higgins had just cast aside at the most dangerous moment possible. The Crestview Federal Bank crisis had commenced 38 hours earlier. Crestview, one of Apex Cyber Solutions' largest financial clients, had contacted our emergency hotline at 9:15 on Thursday night, reporting a catastrophic network failure across their regional footprint. Crestview operated 58 branch locations throughout Texas, handling approximately $220,000 per hour in transaction volume during peak business cycles. The sudden network lock meant online banking was dead, merchant processing was halted, and every single automated teller machine was frozen. Apex Standard Operating Procedure called for initial remote diagnostics. I spent 4 grueling hours on encrypted video streams with Crestview internal IT team, parsing server logs, examining memory dumps, and reviewing security appliance logs. By 1 o'clock Friday morning, I realized remote intervention would not suffice. The infection pattern indicated a zero-day variant of the Crimson Spider ransomware family, specifically tailored to exploit the proprietary authentication handshake Apex had installed 3 years prior. This was precisely the kind of high-stakes technical puzzle that drawn me to cybersecurity decades ago. I booked a 7 o'clock flight to Dallas on Friday morning, landed by 9:30, and headed straight to Crestview's Central Data Center facility. Deanna Prescott, Crestview Federal Bank director, had greeted me at the security entrance, looking completely exhausted, having stayed awake for over 30 straight hours. "Nathaniel, thank goodness you arrived so quickly," she had said, her hands shaking slightly as she handed me my visitor badge. "We have been completely paralyzed. Our executive board is threatening lawsuits, our commercial clients cannot process payroll, and corporate media relations is struggling to contain public panic." I reassured her that I would get to work immediately, requesting direct route access to their core server bay and hardware management consoles. She led me through the secure double doors into the data hall. Rows of high-density server cabinets lined the room, their front panels glowing with amber and crimson fault lights. Diagnostic monitors displayed corrupted partition tables, locked database clusters, and the distinctive digital signature of Crimson Spider ransomware. Millions of customer records were completely encrypted, costing the bank $220,000 every 60 minutes. I spent the next 8 hours isolating the infection vectors, mapping the propagation pathways, and analyzing the key derivation mechanism. By 6 o'clock Friday evening, I had uncovered the precise root cause. The attackers had discovered a hidden buffer overflow vulnerability within the custom authentication module Apex Cyber Solutions had designed and deployed for Crestview 3 years ago. The hackers exploited that single entry point to gain elevated domain administrator privileges, allowing them to push Crimson Spider ransomware across 23 distinct server clusters. The ransomware utilized a modified cryptographic algorithm that rendered standard commercial decryption tools useless. The critical vulnerability existed inside custom assembly code written exclusively by Apex for Crestview and 4 other regional banking networks. Only 2 people in the entire country truly understood that custom authentication logic down to the assembly level, myself and another senior engineer named Gordon Wright. Fixing the breach required reverse engineering the custom key derivation algorithm, exploiting a microsecond timing flaw in the ransomware encryption loop, extracting raw master keys from unallocated server RAM dumps, and systematically decrypting 847 gigabytes of core banking databases. I estimated the recovery process would take between 17 and 21 hours of non-stop work. I began the operation at 7 o'clock Friday night. By 3 o'clock Saturday morning, I had successfully decoded the key derivation sequence and was actively reconstructing the master decryption keys when Lyle Higgins called to inform me I was fired. After Lyle abruptly ended our phone conversation, Diana Prescott walked over to my workstation, noticing the look of intense concentration mixed with disbelief on my face. "Nathaniel, is something wrong with the key extraction?" she asked anxiously. "Lyle Higgins just called to inform me that Apex Cyber Solutions has terminated my employment effective." Immediately, I replied plainly. Her expression shifted instantly from concern to sheer horror. "Terminated," she gasped. "But you are in the middle of restoring our entire core database. What is supposed to happen to our banking operations now?" "That is a question Apex Executive Management will have to answer," I said calmly. "They will need to dispatch another engineer to take over. How long will it take another engineer to get here and understand what you have done?" she demanded, her voice rising in alarm. "The only other person who understands your custom authentication framework is Gordon Wright," I explained. "Gordon is currently deployed in Colorado handling a major credit union breach. He is locked into that engagement for at least another 10 days. After that, he would need at least 3 days to read your system documentation, analyze the attack vector, and review my diagnostic notes. You are looking at nearly 2 weeks before he could realistically begin decryption." Diana turned pale. "2 weeks," she whispered, staggering back against the console desk. "Our bank cannot survive 2 weeks. 2 weeks of operational paralysis would represent over $68 million in direct revenue losses, massive regulatory fines under federal banking statutes, and total destruction of our customer trust. We will be forced into receivership. I recommend you contact Apex Cyber Solutions executive leadership immediately to express the gravity of your situation," I suggested gently while continuing to pack my personal diagnostic hardware into my leather briefcase. At 4:47 in the morning, my phone rang again. This time it was Howard Finch, Chief Technology Officer of Apex Cyber Solutions. Howard had been with the corporation for 18 years and understood the technical realities of our field far better than middle managers like Lyle Higgins. "Nathaniel, I just got off an urgent call with Lyle," Howard began without preamble. "There appears to have been an administrative miscommunication regarding your employment status. We need you to remain on-site at Crestview and complete the database restoration immediately. We can discuss internal personnel matters on Monday morning." "Howard, Lyle was completely explicit," I replied firmly. "He stated my employment was terminated effective immediately. That is not a minor miscommunication. That is a formal severance of employment. I recognize this is an inconvenient moment, but we must prioritize the client crisis," Howard urged, his tone shifting into aggressive negotiation. "First National Bank of Texas and Crestview are our largest institutional accounts. They are bleeding millions of dollars. You need to finish the job first, and then we will resolve your contract status." I am afraid I cannot do that, Howard, I stated clearly. If I am an active employee of Apex Cyber Solutions, then Lyle Higgins needs to issue an official written retraction of my termination, copy human resources, and confirm my full standing. If I am not an employee, then I have no legal authorization or insurance coverage to perform work on Apex proprietary client networks. Accessing client servers as a non-employee would place me in direct violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act under Title 18 of the United States Code. Section 1030. I am sure your legal counsel would agree that performing unauthorized cryptographic operations on a third-party financial network creates massive criminal liability. For both me and Apex, Howard went completely silent. He was trapped in an impossible corporate dilemma. If he formally overruled Lyle Higgins and restored my employment, he would undermine his own management chain and admit that Lyle had committed an unmitigated disaster. If he confirmed my termination, he would be admitting to Crestview Federal Bank that Apex Cyber Solutions had zero operational capacity to resolve their crippling emergency. In crisis management, clear lines of authority and legal compliance are absolute. Apex leadership had severed those lines in a foolish display of corporate posturing. Nathaniel, let me set up a conference call with Lyle and Human Resources right now so we can sort this out, Howard pleaded. I am declining that conference call, Howard, I answered evenly. Lyle made his decision clear at 3:22 this morning. I am respecting that decision by ceasing all work on Apex accounts. If Crestview requires technical support, they should utilize Apex Emergency Ticketing System to request another certified engineer. Good luck with the recovery. I hung up the phone and placed it into my pocket. Deanna Prescott had overheard the entire conversation. Nathaniel, what are we supposed to do now? She asked, tears of frustration welling in her eyes. I cannot let my bank collapse because your former supervisor threw a corporate power trip. I advised her to formally notify Apex Cyber Solutions in writing that Crestview was demanding immediate incident resolution under their master services agreement. She immediately opened her laptop and composed an urgent email to Apex Executive Board and Incident Response Desk, copying me. She demanded an immediate technical replacement within 4 hours, citing the staggering operational losses of $220,000 per hour. At 7:23 Saturday morning, Apex Incident Desk sent an automated reply. We acknowledge receipt of your emergency request. Our senior incident response engineers are currently deployed on higher priority corporate engagements. We are attempting to identify qualified contract resources and will provide an updated ETA within 12 to 24 hours. Diana showed me the screen with pure disgust. 12 to 24 hours just to give us an ETA, she said angrily. That means another $5 million down the drain before anyone even boards a plane. Is there any legal way we can hire you directly right now? Diana asked suddenly. Not through Apex, but as an independent cybersecurity consultant working exclusively for Crestview Federal Bank? I paused to consider the legal framework. Crestview Master Services Agreement with Apex undoubtedly contained standard exclusivity clauses protecting Apex client relationships. However, under standard commercial law and Texas contract standards, when a primary contractor breaches their obligation to provide timely emergency services during a catastrophic event, the client has the legal right to mitigate damages under Section 9 emergency waiver clauses. I explained this distinction to Diana. If your legal team determines that Apex failure to provide an engineer constitutes a material breach of the Master Services Agreement, you can invoke your emergency mitigation rights and retain an external independent consultant, I stated. Diana immediately placed a call to Crestview Chief Legal Counsel and Executive Vice President. After a rapid 20-minute discussion reviewing Section 9 emergency response clauses, her legal team confirmed that Apex written statement admitting a 12 to 24-hour delay released Crestview to engage outside help immediately. She turned to me with renewed determination. Our executive board has approved hiring you directly as an independent emergency consultant, Nathaniel. What is your rate structure? I evaluated the situation carefully. Independent expert consulting for active financial cyber emergencies typically commanded anywhere from $700 to $1,200 per hour depending on urgency and expertise. I was the only person on Earth who could save their institution, and I had just lost my primary source of income due to Lyle Higgins' reckless decision. My emergency rate is $950 per hour, I stated calmly. I require a 30-hour minimum engagement guarantee to ensure complete system recovery, network hardening, and forensic reporting. Furthermore, I require a 50% upfront retainer deposit of $15,000 transferred to my business account before I touch another server console. Diana did not hesitate for a single second. "Done," she said, pulling out her secure authorization token. "I am processing the wire transfer right now." At 9:15 Saturday morning, a notification flashed on my mobile phone. A wire transfer of $15,000 had successfully cleared into my Independent Consulting LLC business account, an account I had maintained for years for minor freelance advisory work, but had never utilized for primary operations. By 9:30, I sat back down at the central server console, fully authorized as an independent contractor, operating directly for Crestview Federal Bank. The dynamic of the work shifted instantly. I was no longer an employee bound by Apex cumbersome bureaucracy and middle management oversight. I was an independent master craftsman, accountable solely to the client standing beside me. The Air Force had taught me that mission clarity breeds success, and my mission was to restore Crestview banking operations before the economic damage became irreversible. I resumed the complex mathematical work of reverse engineering, the CrimSpider key derivation loop. The attack had used an intricate double-key encryption routine that bound system time to disk volume serial numbers. By analyzing raw memory dumps from server node 4, I identified a microsecond timing vulnerability where the ransomware temporarily held decrypted master key fragments in unallocated system RAM during its background iteration loop. Using a custom Python diagnostic script I had crafted over my 19-year career, I systematically harvested those floating memory fragments and reconstructed the master decryption key array. By 6 o'clock Saturday evening, I had validated the master decryption key against 3 corrupted database clusters. The decryption routine worked flawlessly. Bit by bit, encrypted financial records, customer account balances, transaction logs, and mortgage files were restored to their clean, uncorrupted states. The process required absolute precision. One wrong command could overwrite partition headers and permanently corrupt millions of records. It was identical to disarming unexploded ordnance in the military. Methodical, disciplined, and executed without a single shortcut. By 11 o'clock Sunday evening, after 26 consecutive hours of intense technical labor, all 58 Crestview Federal Bank branch networks, merchant processing portals, and automated teller machine arrays were fully online and operational. 0 customer data had been lost. Total network downtime had been contained to 54 hours. Total operational loss was calculated at $11.8 million, a severe blow, but vastly superior to the $70+ million total collapse that would have occurred had Crestview waited for Apex to send a secondary engineer. Diana Prescott stood watching the central live transaction map as blue lights illuminated across all 58 branches, signaling active transaction processing. She looked at me with profound gratitude. "Nathaniel, you saved our institution," she said quietly, shaking my hand warmly. "If we had waited for Apex, Crestview would be bankrupt by next weekend. Your fee is the best investment this bank has ever made. I will personally ensure the remaining balance of your contract is wired first thing tomorrow morning." I prepared a comprehensive 50-page forensic report detailing the root cause vulnerability inside Apex proprietary authentication code, the specific CrimSpider encryption mechanics, and the step-by-step restoration procedures I had executed. I also documented critical security hardening measures to prevent future exploitation. I handed a copy to Diana and advised her to share it with Apex so they could patch their other client systems, protecting those institutions under Title 17 of the United States Code, Section 106 regarding proprietary code protection and intellectual property standards. At 2:34 on Sunday night, as I sat in my Dallas hotel room enjoying a quiet meal after completing my work, my mobile phone rang once more. It was Howard Finch. "Nathaniel, I hear from Crestview that their systems are completely restored, Howard said, his voice carrying a mix of awe and deep anxiety. We need to sit down on Monday morning and discuss your return to Apex Cyber Solutions as principal architect. We are prepared to offer a substantial salary adjustment. Howard, I answered calmly, taking a sip of water. I am no longer interested in working as an employee for Apex. I have officially transitioned to full-time independent cybersecurity consulting. My experience over the past 72 hours has demonstrated that operating independently provides far greater professional autonomy and significantly higher compensation. But Nathaniel, Apex needs your expertise, Howard protested, sounding desperate. We have 3 other regional bank clients experiencing anomalous system alerts right now. We do not have anyone else who can analyze custom assembly code at your level. Then Apex should have considered the value of specialized expertise before allowing Lyle Higgins to fire me at 3:22 in the morning during a major crisis. I replied coolly. In the military, we had a fundamental operational rule. Reckless leadership during a crisis destroys organizational capability. Lyle Higgins demonstrated that Apex leadership treats senior technical talent as disposable assets. I have adapted to that reality. If Apex requires my consulting services for emergency client incidents, you may retain my firm as an external contractor. What would your contractor terms be? Howard asked after a long, painful silence. My terms are straightforward, I explained. A monthly availability retainer of $5,000 to maintain standby status, plus an active incident response rate of $950 per hour for any on-site or remote intervention, with a 20-hour minimum per incident. Travel time is billed at full hourly rates, and I retain complete authority to accept or decline engagements based on my schedule. Howard gasped quietly. Nathaniel, that retainer alone is $60,000 annually, plus hourly fees that could easily total several $100,000 per year. That is more than double your former executive salary. That is correct, Howard, I agreed smoothly. But it is infinitely cheaper than losing multi-million-dollar client contracts and facing catastrophic legal liability when your systems go dark and nobody knows how to fix them. You may discuss my proposal with your board of directors. Over the next 4 weeks, news of the Crestview restoration spread rapidly throughout the regional banking community. Word travels fast in financial cybersecurity circles. Between May and June, I received emergency calls from 9 different financial institutions across 4 states, all experiencing severe malware incidents or complex network failures. In each instance, their primary cybersecurity vendor had failed to provide rapid incident response. Operating as an independent consultant, I resolved all 9 incidents, generating $134,000 in consulting revenue in less than 30 days. By August, 6 major regional banks had signed permanent monthly consulting retainers with my firm, paying a combined $38,000 per month just to guarantee my immediate availability in the event of a cyber breach. That baseline retainer revenue amounted to $456,000 annually before accounting for hourly incident response fees. My wife Clara and I sat at our kitchen table, reviewing the financial ledgers in complete astonishment. In less than 6 months, I was earning nearly 5 times my former corporate salary while working far fewer total hours. In September, Apex Cyber Solutions' board of directors finally capitulated. Facing mounting pressure from institutional clients who demanded guaranteed access to elite incident response capabilities, Howard Finch signed my formal independent consulting agreement. A $5,000 monthly retainer plus $950 per hour for emergency incident response. The very company that had fired me was now paying me $60,000 annually just to keep my phone on, plus premium rates whenever their junior teams got overwhelmed. The ultimate corporate retribution arrived in late November. Apex Board of Directors convened an emergency executive meeting to review annual operational losses and client churn. During that review, the board calculated the true cost of Lyle Higgins' decision to terminate me at 3:22 in the morning during the Crestview crisis. The financial audit revealed a staggering total loss of $2.3 million, directly attributable to Lyle administrative blunder. The $2.3 million breakdown was devastating. Crestview Federal Bank had permanently slashed their annual service contract with APEC by $410,000, citing severe lack of technical response capability. Two other major regional financial institutions had terminated their Apex contracts entirely after learning how close Crestview had come to financial collapse, taking $850,000 in annual contract value elsewhere. Apex had been forced to spend $112,000 in emergency travel, overtime, and contractor fees reassigning secondary engineers from other states. And finally, Apex was now paying my firm tens of thousands of dollars in consulting retainers and emergency hourly fees. On November 21st, the board of directors summarily terminated Lyle Higgins. He was escorted from Apex corporate headquarters by security guards, without severance or executive bonuses. The middle manager who had tried to execute a corporate power trip at 3:22 in the morning had ultimately engineered his own career destruction. In December, Hart Finch called me once more, seeking a casual lunch meeting. Over coffee, he offered a quiet confession. "Nathaniel, Lyle firing of you was the most expensive administrative mistake in our company. 18-year history," Howard admitted, shaking his head. The board realized that institutional knowledge is not an expense item on a spreadsheet. It is the fundamental core of our business. We tried to replace 19 years of specialized experience with middle management policy, and it cost us $2.3 million. I appreciated his honesty, but I declined his subtle offer to rejoin Apex as a corporate executive. I enjoyed my freedom too much. Operating independently allowed me to select meaningful projects, mentor younger engineers, and spend quality time with Clara and our grandchildren. I was no longer an employee subject to corporate politics. I was a recognized industry expert whose specialized knowledge was respected and appropriately valued. In early 2025, I was invited to deliver the keynote address at the Southwest Cybersecurity Conference in Houston, Texas. Speaking before an audience of over 800 chief information security officers, legal counsel, and IT executives, I presented a case study entitled Institutional Knowledge as Critical Infrastructure. I outlined the technical lessons of the Crestview restoration, while emphasizing three fundamental principles governing modern corporate operations. First, specialized institutional knowledge is an indispensable operational asset. When an organization terminates experienced senior technical personnel during an active emergency, it is not reducing payroll expense. It is destroying critical infrastructure that required decades to build. Second, crisis response capability is economically valuable precisely because true expertise is rare, non-fungible, and impossible to replicate on short notice. Companies that treat senior technical experts as interchangeable commodities will inevitably suffer ruinous financial consequences when crises occur. Third, the cost of specialized expertise is always vastly less than the cost of operational downtime. Paying an expert consultant $950 per hour to restore a critical system in 54 hours is extraordinarily cheap compared to enduring weeks of network paralysis and brand destruction. Following the conference presentation, several major financial corporations approached me with lucrative job offers and consulting opportunities. I politely declined all full-time corporate roles while accepting two selective consulting retainers. By the middle of 2025, my consulting practice was generating over $535,000 annually. I was working roughly 60% of the grueling hours I had endured at Apex, while enjoying complete control over my professional life. Clara and I finally booked that extended European vacation we had discussed for over 2 decades, visiting Ramstein and traveling through Germany, where my cybersecurity journey had begun decades ago in the Air Force. My son, who now works as a software engineering manager, told me at a family dinner that my story had become an iconic legend among regional tech circles. "Dad," he laughed, "you are the guy who got fired mid-crisis and made corporate pay triple rates to hire you back while their manager got kicked to the curb. That is the ultimate workplace triumph." Looking back on that fateful 3:22 a.m. phone call in the Dallas server room, I realized that Lyle Higgins thought he was exercising power over an expendable subordinate. He believed that corporate authority superseded technical reality. He failed to comprehend that when you fire the only person in the room who knows how to stop the fire, you do not eliminate the fire. You simply guarantee that your own building will burn to the ground. Sometimes the most effective revenge is not proving your detractors wrong through argument. It is stepping back calmly, following their instructions, and allowing them to experience the full, catastrophic cost of being wrong.